That morning started like every other. I was up before the sun, sipping on black coffee that tasted more like burnt toast than anything comforting. The house was still, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional chirp of the old wall clock that always ran 5 minutes fast. I was halfway through clearing my inbox when my laptop pinged. At first, I figured it was just another receipt from the shared cloud drive my wife and I used. Random stuff like vet appointments, car maintenance invoices, or **TS from Pinterest Julia saved when she wanted my opinion on throw pillows. I didn't expect anything heavy, but the preview froze me in place. A photo, not mine, uploaded just minutes ago from her phone. It showed Julia standing at a bar, dimly lit, modern. She had that half smile on her face, the one she used to give me when we were first dating, like the world had stopped for just a second. She was dressed in a slim black dress, something elegant, maybe even expensive. It wasn't what she left the house in the night before. Next to her stood a man. Older than me, definitely. Trim beard, expensive watch, the kind of guy who looked like he had 3 personal assistants and a weekend place in Aspen. Their arms weren't touching, but they didn't need to be. His hand was resting casually on the back of her chair. Hers was on the bar, fingers relaxed, comfortable. And their eyes, God. Their eyes were locked in a way I couldn't unsee. Beneath the photo there was a caption. It read, "Amazing night, gorgeous red heart." My chest tightened. Could have meant anything, right? People toss hearts around in messages these days like they mean nothing. Except this didn't feel like nothing. I didn't even realize how hard I was gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. I heard her coming down the hallway, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a metronome measuring the seconds before impact. She walked into the kitchen like it was any other Thursday morning. Hair freshly styled, makeup subtle but precise, lips the same shade of mauve she only wore on important days. And the perfume, floral, sharp, unfamiliar, lingered in the air long after she walked past me. "Morning," she said, smiling like everything was fine. She poured herself coffee, barely glancing in my direction. I watched her in silence, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the image still glowing on my screen. I waited until she sat at the counter, scrolling through her phone with that distracted half-focus she'd perfected over the years. Then I turned the laptop toward her. "You want to tell me about this?" She glanced up, confused for a second, then froze. Just for a moment. A flicker. But I saw it. Then she smiled again, softer this time. "Oh, that was last night. The team did a happy hour thing after work, just to celebrate Boss's Day. You know, Eric's little party." "Eric?" I asked. "The guy in the picture?" "Yeah, that's him. He called you gorgeous." She laughed, lightly, like I was being absurd. "He calls everyone that. It's just who he is. Flirty, kind of dramatic." That caption wasn't just for me. He posted it in the group chat. You know how these execs are. I didn't know. I'd never met the guy. Julia and I used to talk about our coworkers all the time. We used to share stories about annoying clients, weird Slack messages, office gossip that only mattered for 5 minutes. But I hadn't heard about Eric. Not once. "How come I've never heard of him?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She took a sip of coffee before answering. "Because he's new. Transferred from the San Francisco office like 3 months ago. I barely interact with him. Seriously, it's not what it looks like." I looked down at the screen again. Her face in that photo, it wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It was warm. "He sent that to the whole team?" I asked. "Yeah, everyone." I nodded, slowly, but something inside me wasn't buying it. Not because she was smiling in a photo. Not even because of the caption. But because of how quick and rehearsed her answer sounded. The way her tone was almost too casual. Like she'd practiced it. "Why was the picture in our shared cloud?" I asked. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "It was uploaded automatically. From your phone. Same folder we use for taxes, receipts. Why would a photo like this end up there?" There was a pause, barely a second, but I felt it. "Oh," she said. "Yeah, I guess it's still linked. I forgot. I'll change that later." She stood up, already grabbing her bag like the conversation was over. "You're really going to let this ruin your morning?" she asked, brushing her hand across my shoulder with a lightness that made my skin crawl. "It was just a drink. One picture. You're overthinking it." Maybe I was. Maybe. She leaned in, kissed me on the cheek, too quick, and said, "Don't forget, I have that presentation at noon. I'll be home late." Then she was gone. The door closed behind her, and the house was quiet again. Except it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. I sat there, staring at the laptop screen long after the display dimmed. There was a time when I wouldn't have doubted her. A time when I'd see that photo and brush it off without a second thought. But that time was gone. I didn't say anything else that morning. I didn't send her a follow-up text. I didn't check her location or ask her to clarify. I just sat there, drinking lukewarm coffee, trying to remember the last time she told me she loved me without me saying it first. And I couldn't. After that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something subtle, but irreversible. And once that kind of doubt settles in, it spreads, like a crack in glass. You might not notice it at first, but give it time, and eventually the whole thing shatters. That afternoon, I barely focused on work. Emails blurred together. Meetings passed like noise. All I could think about was that photo, the way her eyes locked on his, the subtle lean of her posture, the way her lips curled, not in some polite office-safe smile, but in something warmer. Mate. My mind kept circling back to one question I didn't want to ask. How long had I been ignoring the signs? It wasn't like this started overnight. If I'm being honest, things had been off for a while. I remember the first time I really felt it. Maybe a few months back. Julia came home late one evening, said she stayed behind to help a coworker prep for a board presentation. I believed her. She looked tired, had folders in hand, laptop under her arm, but something in her eyes felt far away, distant, like she was still somewhere else mentally. Then there was her phone. She used to leave it on the counter charging overnight. No password, no hiding. We shared playlists, photos, grocery lists. Nothing was secret. But lately, screen always face down. Notifications silenced. A new lock screen. At first, she claimed it was because of new IT policy at work, mandatory security updates. But even that didn't make sense. Since when did mandatory security require her to take her phone into the bathroom while she showered? I told myself not to overthink it. Everyone deserves privacy, right? That's what trust is. Giving someone the benefit of the doubt even when you feel uncertain. But now that I look back with clearer eyes, the doubt was always there. I just buried it beneath convenience. There were other things, too. Expensive things. One afternoon, I came home early and found a new perfume bottle on her nightstand. Not the kind she normally wore. This one was heavier, deeper scent, bold, seductive. She said she picked it up during a work trip, that it was just a sample from a client. But there were no other samples. Just that one. Nearly half empty already. And the jewelry. A pair of gold earrings she swore were on sale. A designer handbag I'd never seen before. I asked about it, half joking, "Did we win the lottery?" She laughed and said she just wanted to treat herself. That she'd been under a lot of stress lately. I didn't push. I told myself it was nothing. I wanted to believe her. But when you start looking backward with suspicion, it all lines up too well. She started skipping out on our weekend plans. First, it was little things. "Can we reschedule dinner with your sister?" Or, "I need to take this call. I'll meet you at the park." Normal stuff, really. But after a while, she stopped going altogether. The weekend getaway we'd planned months in advance? Cancelled. Last minute. She claimed she had a work emergency. Some audit that needed her attention. I went alone. I should have seen it then. But the most obvious change, the one I ignored because I didn't want to face it, was the way she started treating me. Not with anger. Not with cruelty. But with absence. When we first met, Julia and I could talk for hours. About anything. We'd stay up late watching documentaries neither of us cared about just to have an excuse to keep talking. She used to ask me about my day, actually listen, make fun of my bad jokes. She'd lean her head on my shoulder during movies and instinctively reach for my hand in the car. But now our conversations were logistical. Schedules, groceries, dry cleaning. If I brought up anything emotional or real, she'd shut down. Say she was tired. Say it wasn't the right time. And physical affection? Gone. Not just S*X, that stopped a while ago, but everything else, too. The casual touches. The hugs in the kitchen. The way she used to rest her hand on my knee while I drove. All of it just vanished. She started sleeping farther away from me in bed. Like there was a silent border drawn down the middle. Her back always turned. My arm would reach for her out of habit, but it just felt like trying to hold on to a shadow. It wasn't even rejection. It was indifference. That hurt more. At some point, I stopped trying. I told myself it was just a phase. That she was under pressure. That we were both just busy and tired and the world was chaotic. But I think the truth was simpler than that. She was leaving, piece by piece. And I didn't notice until she was already halfway gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing, replaying everything from the last 6 months in my head like a messed-up highlight reel. Every moment that had seemed slightly off. Every vague answer. Every excuse I convinced myself to believe. I thought about the trip we canceled. About how I'd gone alone to visit my parents while she stayed behind for emergency meetings. About the time she came home smelling like someone else's cologne and said it was just from a coworker's hug. I remembered her birthday last year, when I surprised her with dinner reservations at the restaurant she'd been dying to try. She seemed distracted the whole night. Her phone kept lighting up under the table. She barely touched her food. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and said she just had a headache. Now I wondered who she was texting. And then the picture. That stupid, casual, soul-crushing photo. Why was it uploaded to our shared cloud? She hadn't even realized it. That's what kept echoing in my head. If she'd meant to show it to me, she would have framed it differently. Explained it before I asked. Covered her tracks. But she didn't. It just appeared, like fate decided to stop protecting me. Part of me wanted to be wrong. I kept grasping at threads. Maybe it really was innocent. Maybe that's just how he talks to everyone. Maybe I'm overthinking this. But another part of me, deeper, quieter, knew. This wasn't about a single photo. It wasn't about a heart emoji or a glass of wine at a bar. It was about erosion. Little by little, day by day, she'd been pulling away, hiding parts of herself from me, sharing them with someone else. And I'd watched it happen, blind and trusting, until there was nothing left to pretend about. I didn't want to become the kind of man who snooped, who doubted, who questioned his wife's every move. But something inside me was breaking, something foundational. And when that breaks, there's no easy way to put it back together. As I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't face the truth soon, it was going to eat me alive. By the third night, I had stopped trying to pretend everything was okay. It was like something inside me had shifted from doubt to inevitability. The seed had been planted with that photo, but now it had roots, and it was growing fast. Each hour that passed felt like I was living next to someone I didn't recognize anymore. I'd been quiet since that morning. Not cold, just quiet, careful. Julia noticed, I could tell. She kept doing this thing where she'd glance at me from across the room like she was checking a smoke alarm. Nothing direct. Just enough to clock my mood, as if she was trying to calculate how much longer she could keep the story going. That Thursday evening, she came out of the bedroom in heels and a sharp navy blazer, her makeup fresh and subtle. She looked good, better than she had in weeks. Too good for a company strategy session, which is what she claimed was happening. "We're meeting off-site," she said casually while fixing an earring. "Place on the east side. Management wants to break out of the boardroom and get creative. Corporate nonsense." "Sounds fun," I said, sipping from my mug. I didn't press, didn't argue, just nodded like any husband would. She smiled, but I noticed how her eyes didn't stay on mine. She adjusted her jacket a second time before grabbing her bag. I probably won't be back until late, she added, already moving toward the door. I stood as she grabbed the handle. Drive safe, I said. She paused, then gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Light, routine. A formality more than anything else. Of course, she said. Love you. But she said it like a line she'd memorized. And then she was gone. The second I heard the door close and her heels echo down the front steps, I moved. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't change clothes. I just grabbed my keys, locked up, and got into my car. This wasn't the man I usually was. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't the guy who followed people. I believed in trust, in space, in honesty and benefit of the doubt. But when everything in your gut screams that you're being played, you either sit still and suffer or you get up and find out. I chose to find out. I kept a careful distance, following her tail lights through traffic. IK** led the radio, turned off the cabin lights, and focused. She didn't head toward the city center or even the business park where most of her meetings took place. She drove east, farther east than made sense. Eventually, her car turned off into a small lot outside a boutique hotel tucked between a yoga studio and an upscale sushi place. It was the kind of hotel that looked low-key from the outside but screamed privacy on the inside. Not the sort of place for team building. I pulled into the parking lot across the street and K** led my engine. The air was still. The glow from the hotel lobby lit up the sidewalk like a stage. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on the entrance. A minute passed, then two, and then I saw her. She stepped out of her car, phone in hand, and smiled, genuinely smiled, before waving to someone I couldn't see. Then he stepped into view. It was him, the man from the photo. Same watch, same posture, same smug, polished look like nothing in the world could touch him. He wore confidence like a tailored suit. And Julia? She looked soft around him, relaxed, like she was stepping into a life that had nothing to do with mine. They exchanged a few words I couldn't hear, then walked side by side toward the hotel doors. Not touching, but close, too close. And just before they disappeared inside, he leaned in and said something that made her laugh. Her hand grazed his arm, and then, like the moment had always been meant to happen, they kissed. It wasn't long, just a moment, a soft press of lips. Familiar, comfortable, private, but it was long enough. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared through the windshield, frozen in place. So this was it. Not a suspicion. Not an uncomfortable hunch. Not some vague intuition I could explain away. This was fact. My wife was cheating on me. The world didn't explode. No lightning struck. There was no dramatic swell of music or movie-like epiphany. Just silence. Just the quiet, hollow sound of something inside me finally caving in. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the hotel door to close. Long enough for the image to burn itself into my memory. Eventually, I started the car. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't yell or make a scene. That wasn't me. I just drove home, the same road we used to take to date nights, to anniversaries, to birthday dinners and furniture stores and lazy Sunday drives. I drove it alone now, and by the time I pulled into our driveway, I felt like a different man. I stepped inside the house and everything felt wrong. Her perfume still lingered in the air. The mail she sorted earlier was still on the counter. Her coffee mug, half full, lipstick stained, sat beside mine on the table, like nothing had changed. But everything had. I walked into the bedroom and stood there for a long time, just staring at the space we shared. The bed we'd laughed in, argued in, talked for hours in. The room felt like a crime scene. Only no one had died. Just something sacred between us. Then I pulled out 2 suitcases. Not mine. Hers. I didn't rage. I didn't throw things or tear anything apart. I just started packing. Shirts, dresses, shoes, chargers, makeup bags. Each item folded with care but no affection. I even included her travel toothbrush. She'd need that wherever she was going. Halfway through, I paused to sit on the edge of the bed. My hands rested on my knees. My chest felt heavy, but not with anger. Not even grief. Just emptiness. This was what betrayal looked like in real time. Not fire. Not shouting. Just a man folding a red blouse into a suitcase because he had nothing else left to believe in. When I was done, I placed both suitcases near the door. I didn't text her. I didn't leave a note. She would see them when she came home, and I'd let that speak for me. She came home around 11:40 p.m. I know because I was sitting on the couch watching the clock, counting the minutes like each one was a reminder that I was still there and she wasn't. The house was dim save for the kitchen light. The suitcases were lined up by the door like silent witnesses. When the key turned in the lock, I didn't flinch. I didn't even look up. The door opened slowly, cautiously. She stepped inside and froze the second she saw the bags. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stood there, like she'd walked into someone else's life by accident. Then she saw me. "Andrew?" she said, voice quiet, uncertain. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. She glanced at the bags again, then back to me. "What's going on?" "You tell me," I replied. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. I stood up slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "You went to a meeting tonight, right? Strategy session?" She blinked. "Yes. With your team." She nodded once. "Yeah, I told you." "At a hotel," I said. "With Eric." Her whole body tensed. She blinked again, slower this time. "What are you talking about?" "I followed you, Julia." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I didn't plan to," I said. But something in me just wouldn't shut up. I had to know. I had to see for myself. She looked away, her mouth opening like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. "I watched you meet him," I continued. "I saw the way you smiled at him. I saw the way you touched his arm. And I saw the kiss." Now her eyes snapped back to mine, wide with panic. "Andrew, it wasn't a mistake," I said, cutting her off. "Don't insult me like that. That kiss didn't come out of nowhere. That was planned, practiced, familiar." She took a step forward. "Please, can we talk about this?" "We are talking," I said. "No, I mean really talk. Not like this." Her voice was shaking now. "Just sit down with me, and let me explain." "There's nothing left to explain," I said quietly. "I saw enough." Silence stretched between us. Her eyes were glassy, filling slowly. She stepped closer, hesitant. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." That sentence hit me like a freight train. Not "I didn't mean for this to happen." Not "I'm sorry." Just, "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." She realized it too, I think. Her hand rose to cover her mouth, like she wished she could take it back. "I didn't mean," she started. "But you did," I said, voice low. "That's exactly what you meant." Her expression crumpled. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "You have to believe that." I shook my head. "You didn't care if you hurt me, Julia. You cared if you got caught." Tears began rolling down her cheeks now. She didn't try to stop them. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "No," I replied. "You made a choice." She sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, her hands trembling in her lap. I didn't move. "I didn't plan any of this," she said. "It started with texts. Small things. Late nights at work. He listened. He asked questions. He noticed when I was stressed. And I didn't?" She looked up at me. "You were always there, Andrew. But after a while, it felt like we were roommates. Not partners. Not lovers. Just people in the same house." "That's how you felt," I said. "You didn't tell me." "I tried," she said. "But every time I brought it up, you were tired or distracted or said we'd talk later. And I stopped trying. So instead, you started hiding." She nodded once, slow, ashamed. "I knew it was wrong," she said. "But when I was with him, I felt something. I felt seen." "Was he worth it?" I asked. "Was any of this worth what you've done?" She didn't answer, just looked at the floor, tears falling silently. "I packed your things," I said. "There by the door." Her head lifted again, eyes wide. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave. Her breath hitched. For how long? I don't know yet, I said. But I can't look at you right now and pretend that this is fixable. I can't sit across from you at dinner and pretend like I didn't watch you kiss someone else. She stood up, slowly, like the weight of it all was finally hitting her. Andrew, I don't have anywhere to go. Figure it out, I said. Call him, book a room, stay with a friend. I don't care. She looked around the house, like she was already mourning it, like it was slipping from her fingers. And maybe it was. I didn't expect to feel like this, she said, barely a whisper. Like what? Like I just lost everything. I nodded. That's what happens when you gamble with something you're not willing to lose. She stood there a moment longer. Then, slowly, she turned and walked to the door. She reached for the handle, then paused and looked back at me. I'm sorry, she said. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I didn't reply. She picked up her bags, opened the door, and stepped outside. And then she was gone. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loud. A vacuum that ked the air from the room. I sat back down on the couch, staring at the space she'd just occupied. Everything still smelled like her perfume. I stayed there for hours. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check my phone. Just sat in the stillness, feeling the first full weight of what had happened. She cheated. She lied. And now she was gone. But I wasn't relieved. I wasn't even angry. I was hollow, like the life I'd been living had just cracked open, and I was standing in the center of it, looking around at the ruins. She came back 2 days later. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the knock. Not a key in the door, just 3 quiet knocks, like someone visiting a place they no longer belonged. I opened it, and there she stood. Julia, hair pulled back, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, like part of her had deflated in my absence. I'm not here to fight, she said immediately. I just need to ask something. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I don't have anywhere to go, she said. The hotel's too expensive. My sister's place is full, and I don't want to go to him. A pause. Can I stay here? Just until I figure things out? I looked at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to shut the door. Part of me wanted to say, you figured things out the moment you walked into that hotel. But another part, the tired, emotionally wrung out part, just didn't have the energy. So I stepped aside. She came in without a word, walking slowly, almost cautiously, like the house had changed in her absence. Maybe it had. She stayed in the guest room. We didn't talk much that first night. She made herself small, moved quietly, barely touched anything. She cooked her own meals, stayed off the living room TV, and avoided me in the hallway. We became 2 people living parallel lives under the same roof, sharing space but not lives, breathing the same air, but never looking each other in the eye. The weirdest part was how normal everything looked from the outside. Our cars still parked side by side. Our mail still arriving at the same address. The neighbors still waving when they saw one of us out front. But behind the front door, everything had cracked. Day 3 felt even stranger. She left a note on the counter. Made coffee. Didn't know if you'd want any. Hope you got some sleep. I stared at it for a while. Not because of what it said, but because of how it felt, like a message from a former life. Julia used to leave me notes all the time. Sweet ones. Stupid ones. Grocery reminders with little hearts drawn next to them. But this was something else. This was polite, careful, like she was writing to a landlord. I poured the coffee anyway, tasted off. Not bad, just wrong. That evening we crossed paths in the hallway. She was coming out of the guest room. I was heading into the kitchen. We both stopped short, standing there awkwardly, as if we'd run into each other in a stranger's house. She gave a small smile, one of those tight, forced ones people wear at funerals. How was work? She asked. I didn't respond right away, just stared at her, wondering if she actually wanted to know or if she was just trying to pretend for a second that we weren't living in a broken echo of a marriage. "It was fine," I said eventually. She nodded. "That's good." Then we both stepped aside and kept walking. That was the new routine. Not yelling, not fighting, just silence. Polite, measured, devastating. The strange how quickly people adapt to pain. Within a week, we had a rhythm again. Not the one we used to have, but a new, quieter one. She made dinner most nights. Not for me specifically, but enough for two. She'd plate it and leave it on the stove with a little note. "If you're hungry." Sometimes I ate it. Sometimes I didn't. I started coming home later, just to avoid the awkwardness. She started going to bed earlier, probably for the same reason. One night, I came in around 10:30 and found her sitting on the couch. Lights off. Just the blue glow of the TV washing over her face. She didn't flinch when I walked in, just looked over, eyes tired. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. I nodded, not really knowing what to say. There was a movie playing, something we used to watch together every Christmas. She glanced back at the screen. "I forgot how sad the ending was," she added. I wanted to say something like, "You forgot a lot of things," but I didn't. I just walked past her, up the stairs, and shut the door behind me. By the 10th day, the silence started to feel permanent. She still slept in the guest room, still kept her distance, but I could feel her trying. Little things. Wiping down the counters before I got home. Folding my laundry when I left it in the dryer. Asking if I needed anything from the store when she made a list. I responded with nods, shrugs, half-hearted thanks. But I didn't feel anything. Not warmth, not anger, just a dull fog between us. Then, one morning, she did something new. I found another note on the counter. Same neat handwriting. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I mean it." I read it once, then again, then folded it and put it in the drawer next to the microwave. Not to save it, just to get it out of sight. The next few days passed slowly. Julia stayed mostly in her room. I stayed out of the house as much as I could. Every night felt the same. Quiet meals, awkward hallway encounters, passing each other like strangers with matching house keys. But I started to notice something. She looked hollow, not in a performative way, not in a please forgive me way, just empty. One night, I came down to grab water and found her asleep on the couch with the TV still playing. A half-written journal sat open on the coffee table. I didn't read it, but I saw the first line. "I don't recognize myself anymore." I stood there for a while, just watching her sleep. I should have felt something. But I didn't. Not rage. Not pity. Just exhaustion. It finally hit me on the 12th day. She wasn't going to leave unless I made her. I don't mean physically. I mean emotionally. She'd created a reality where she could stay, where if she acted quiet enough, helpful enough, small enough, I might eventually let her back in. But she'd already made her choice the night she let someone else hold the part of her that used to be mine. And I'd made mine the moment I watched it happen. She wasn't my wife anymore, not in the way that mattered. And this house? It wasn't home, not with her still in it. The silence became unbearable. Julia kept trying, little notes, small talk, meals for two. But none of it reached me. She was present, but love wasn't. Every evening, I felt her nearby, like a ghost of the woman I used to know. And each time she spoke, it only reminded me how far gone we were. I realized she wasn't staying because of us. She was staying because she had nowhere else to go. But I did. I could leave this limbo, or I could end it. And I knew what I had to do. She wasn't going to leave on her own. I saw it clearly now. The day I begged her to stay, she chose someone else. And in the days after, her silence, her distance, it was all part of that choice. I had spent weeks in a house full of lies, suffocating under the weight of what used to be. I needed to breathe again. I told her quietly that it was time to go, for real. She didn't fight, didn't cry, just nodded. And when she walked out the door, I finally exhaled. I was free.